I am exhausted. uh, Hello, welcome back to my floor. So today I have one more slightly brainless video with a little more topic. I've been very busy. This is my first full day off from doing things in over a week. So we will see how this goes and how long it ends up being. But I want to talk about something me and my friend were talking about while she was in town this last week, and that is why I don't want to spend time in certain stores in London. So yeah, you might see photos or videos I've taken, or I will just be using other people's, and they will be tagged as they should be. Just so you have a visual. But yeah. Store layout. Store layout is very important to me. And some of the stores' layouts in London really make me not want to go in. In particular, I am talking about department stores, which here are very, very large. It's not like your JCPenney's or your Macy's. These are full city block long stores some of the times. But yeah. So, to start with, I'm going to talk about Harrods. For what I don't like. I don't love spending time in the Harrods. If you've ever been in Harrods in London, you would know that there are no windows anywhere in the store except in the escalator bays on the sides of the building. You go in and basically if you are not by a door, there's no windows, and that is 90% of the reason I do not like it in there. I like having windows because it also just makes it feel very enclosed. And I know why they don't have windows. It's so you develop time blindness and don't realize how much time you've been spending in the store, so hopefully you spend more. This was highly studied with IKEA in their layout. But in this store, it just doesn't inspire me to even want to stay in it. Another big reason is the store itself can feel very sterile, in a sense, because of how they've just decided to lay out the store. So when you go on to, say, the first women's wear floor, that is where they carry most of their big name designer brands. So you have your Gucci's, your Louis Vuittons, your Moncler's, the Row. All of the big names are on this first women's wear floor. But when you go in through what they call their super brands, which is your bigger brands, so your Dior's, Louis Vuitton, Chanel's, they all basically have individual stores in that section. So you have to go in and talk to somebody to even get in, and they assign you someone to shop with and what all those things, right? It'd be like going into a normal storefront for these stores, but it's inside the department store. So that one makes it feel very unapproachable. And then when you go out into the more typical department store bays where it's sectioned off, it is more approachable, but it's also just something about the ceiling height and the floor and everything that just I will say the light makes it feel very harsh. It just doesn't inspire me to want to spend time. I also think the layout of the store is not great. I know there's certain areas that are sectioned off because I believe the back end of one of the sides is actually apartments, so this store doesn't own that. But also in the store layout itself, because of how they stock on the floor, and this is very common for most luxury department stores, is they keep one of each item on a rack, and then they will go back and get the size you need. They need to keep all of that stock close, so they go and run and grab it for you. So they have sections of this department store that are basically blocked off because they're just stock rooms. But by doing this, it makes it so there's areas you have to completely backtrack to get out of, which I find annoying. There's not a good circular path to take through the whole floor to see everything. But yeah, my biggest gripe is actually the no windows. That is really the thing I don't like the most about Harrods. But going back to the individual storefronts, I do think there's a way to do this well, where everyone basically has their own individual storefronts, and I think that's done really well in Dover Street Market. So the reason I think it's done better in Dover Street Market than in Harrods is because if you go into a Dover Street Market, which is owned by Comme des Garçons, so a lot of the brands fall under the Comme des Garçons label, most setups are individual areas, but it's not like they have salespeople waiting in each area to talk to you. It's a little more browsy, even of individual booths. And I definitely like that a lot more. It doesn't feel like there's someone just staring at you the whole time, waiting for you to buy something. You have a little more freedom of movement. But Dover Street Market is also a special case because a lot of the times it's also got like art installs in it and all these things. So, and they also, due to how they need to have their stock rooms, don't have circular floors, so I also don't like that. But they do have one thing I do like, windows, at least on their first floor. I believe they're blocked out on the upper floors, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I think Dover Street does a much better job of like the individual booth for like per person, or brand I should say. And like even some of them, like I know the Jacquemus like section bleeds into a second section, and they're not always labeled like what brand they are, and that's fine. I know specifically in the Dover Street here, Balenciaga has their own security they keep on site, which whatever, your choice. But yeah, it feels more approachable. And also, if you're looking for more interesting niche designers, I do recommend going to Dover Street. You're still going to run into Bottega, Prada, a bunch of them, but you will find more niche designers. But on the flip side, I would like to talk about a store I really like, and that is going through Selfridges. The main reason is Selfridges does not block any of their windows that they would not need to put in like a stock room or something. Yeah, there's windows, they have tall ceilings. It doesn't feel like they've blocked down their ceilings to make the ceiling shorter. It also has a bit of a sterile feel, but not in the way that makes Harrods unbearable, but in a way that feels like nice and clean. They also do have like branded sections and just like the main areas of department store where it's just racks and racks of clothing. But in like the branded small sections, there's not, most of them don't have walls in between them. They're still open. They're open spaces. It makes it, again, much more approachable, makes me much more willing to go in. I always feel much more comfortable going in, even to like the main department store like stalls, and like touching the clothing and looking at the clothing. Because again, unlike Harrods, I don't feel like there's anyone there pressuring me. It also is because when you go through Harrods, you don't see many people actually looking at the clothes, so it makes it feel like you should also not really be looking at the clothes. Whereas if you go into Selfridges, you'll see people milling about through all the clothes all the time, as opposed to, and like then you're like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go look at the clothes because other people are looking at them. And I don't know, that might just be a me thing, but I definitely think that says a lot if I see more people always going through the clothes there. But yeah, they also, the nice thing about the Selfridges is the floors are, you could get around a whole floor without repeating a specific section, and I do enjoy that. It makes it a more enjoyable experience to try to go around the floor, because then you don't feel like you're looking at something you've looked at 1,000 times. But yeah, your store layout does matter, and how you choose to create light also really matters. I like that when I go into Selfridges and it's later or just later in the year, I know the sun has set. I know what time it is roughly. Does it hurt a bit when you're in there at 4:30 and it's dark out? Maybe. But like, there's just something about it that makes you feel better about being in there. It doesn't feel as like taxing to be in the Selfridges as it does to be in the Harrods, if that makes sense. And then just to round it out as like a little fourth special case, I'm going to talk about Liberty's. Liberty's is in a very old, I don't know if the building itself was built in the Tudor period, but it's built in the Tudor style. So when you go in, there's big, on the upper floors, there's always a, so when you go in the main section of the building, on the upper floors, there will be kind of like balconies, and you can always see down onto the first floor. Right now they have a Farm Rio like art display up through that, which is really cool, but it does make their layout space very tight. But because they don't really do individual booth sections very often, especially in the upstairs ready to wear, because of course like purses, bags, shoes are always going to be different. They are a lot more of just like, here's a rack of this brand, here's a rack of this brand. It's not so much branded space a lot of the time in Liberty's, and I think that's what helps them, especially with like the more limited space they get. Because if you go out of, the building kind of has three sections, so you have big room with the circle cut out of it, another big room most of the time. So those two big rooms work a lot more like traditional department store areas, where it's just kind of like rack of clothing with a label, and then the ones in the middle are just kind of that, but it's normally like smaller brand sizing, so like brands who would carry less stock are normally in that room. But yeah, I think they successfully work around the architecture, but also half of what you're going into Liberty's to do is to look at the building, to be quite honest, because it is just a very interesting building. They have frogs carved into some of their posts. Yeah. I don't know how much of this made sense, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had a great time. Hopefully we will have something a little more on top of it and coherent next week, but we'll see. That's about all I have. I will see you next week. Okay, bye. Women do be shopping.